Hello and welcome to the Media Bolt podcast, where we talk all things content creation. Whether you're starting out and hitting the record button for the first time, or whether you're going to be working on your next big cinema project, we're going to give you all the tactical tools and advice to make sure the next time you hit the record button, you're ready to go. I'm Eric.
And I'm Justin.
And today, we're going to be going through our business process. So that's going to be from pre-production to regular production, right in the mix of it, and into post-production. Caveat, we're talking about this from a larger scale commercial project. This isn't going to be talking about how we do the podcast. We can maybe do that in another episode. Let us know in the comments and thoughts if you are interested in that, and some of our smaller productions. But today we're going through what we do with the bigger projects. And I think this topic is really cool for a couple of reasons. Because number one, if you're watching this on YouTube or through social media, you're looking at the entire team. We have contractors and a great group of people that we've connected with that we will hire out and get help from on bigger projects when we need to. But pretty much what we're talking about today is going to be something that the two of us can do and have done many times in the past. And I think that that's really an interesting point, because how many times have we done a project or sent somebody something? It's like, man, that looks way better than what I thought two people could accomplish. Yeah. So we really want to not only show credibility within our business with this episode, but we also want to be as transparent as we can as a business, so that if you're, somebody who's going through college right now through your film program and you want to make sure that you're on the right track, we're going to give you some programs that we use, some methods that we use. We're going to be just going into everything. So a long-winded intro aside, what is your thought on what we're really talking about today?
Yeah, so it's cool because it's important for us to be as detailed as possible for these bigger projects. A lot of it is, when you are bringing contractors on and bringing people in, maybe you have some PAs coming over from local school or whatever. If we're not detailed and doing what we're supposed to do, they're not going to have any idea about what this project is. So it's really important for us to do our homework so that we can share and make sure our teams are, understanding what's going on. And I think this is a lot of what this process is, and what we've kind of developed helps us. So when we bring people on, it's a lot easier for them to just kind of mix in and know what's going on. And I just think that this is, valuable and really changes the game for us when we started approaching projects this way.
Shall we start with pre-production?
Let's do it.
All right, let's dive right into it. So pre-production is the most important part. We need to make sure, as a business, as directors, as cinematographers, filmmakers, storytellers, that we're ready to go. So let's start by talking about the pre-production from the pitching side of things. So when we go and pitch to a client, we need to make sure that, and I think maybe this will naturally differ into both types of pre-production, because there's stuff that we're creating on our own that, obviously we'll start into that maybe a little bit later, but let's take it from the perspective of it is a commercial shoot. We have to pitch it to the client. So we're going to have that initial meeting. Maybe it's an onboarding. Maybe we've worked with them before and we kind of have an idea of what we might be trying to want to get into, but it's important for us to know what they want, because we're going to work together, the two of us, and come up with ideas, concepts. We're going to make sure, so one of our clients we do a year-long contract for, and we shoot once a quarter. So we go to them once a year with a whole bunch of ideas. We know what their marketing schedule is. We know exactly what promotions they're running. So we're going to come up with ideas that fit within those, and we're going to present that to them. How do we go through that process?
Yeah, so number one, you got to get the ideas that you have. You got to get those kind of corralled into a place that makes sense. And like in the concepting phase, a lot of times, whether it's conversations or it's just taking notes, we like to kind of, start broad, take some notes, have a document, and then from there we can start to flesh it out so that we can give something sort of visual to show our client. And one of the ways that we do that part of it is through pitch.com. And pitch.com is something that we actually adopted a little more recently in the last year or so. But man, it is incredible. There's a lot of different places where you can either make them on Photoshop or Canva or, things like that. But they take a lot of time because you got to format them. This comes pre-formatted and ready to go. So in pitch.com, we basically take an idea. We wrote out, what it may like a treatment, what it may look like, sound like, the story beats start to end. And now we're kind of going to pull some reference images and start making a storyboard within there, along with being able to, put budgets in the pitch, put schedules and potential locations, which was really important on this last one that we did was, giving a couple options for locations for each thing so that they can have a full idea of, okay, a full scope of what this is going to look like, what this is going to cost us, because that's really important to a client. And then, just the execution of it. And when they can see that, they're going to be much more likely to agree to something because they're going to say, okay, well, they have everything detailed. They have a plan and a process, and it's going to make them feel more comfortable, right? So pitch.com is like, it's been amazing, and it's great for proposals as well for some of you filmmakers that are looking at just, hey, my job costs this much. I need to be paid this. This is why. Here's some information about my company. And the great thing is it saves templates as well. So we've made several different templates in there depending on what type of project we're doing. But great asset to have.
Yeah, I think the most important part before we ever pitch something to a client is, we want to make sure that they see everything as vividly as possible. I think it's important for us to know, before we even pitch something to a client, we want to be able to see that 30-second spot play out in our head. Obviously, there's going to be changes. Nothing's going to be perfectly just agreed upon and done right away, but we want to make sure that as we're pitching something, we're prepared enough to be able to take them through that journey of each shot, each step, the story arc of each piece, why, and a lot of it is, I don't want to say that we're like, going into, I don't want to say argument's not the right word, but like we want to make sure that if they have a question on something that we can back up why we chose to do it this way over another way. And exactly. I think the beautiful thing of the way we do it is we are aware of other ways that it can be done. And if they bring something up, I think we're also confident enough in what we are proposing that we can either convince them that it is better, or if, like we always say, we're the experts in our field, we're not the experts in their field. Yeah. And we like that way. So if there's something that they're like, but, for this shot, I think it would make more sense because of this, we're more than willing to pivot and say, you know what, you're right. Let's when we get home after this meeting, we'll put some shots together and give you this vision as well.
A lot of it's knowing your client. And,
true.
Sometimes they're like a little more like, we want it this way. We've done it this way. We're hiring you to execute our vision. Others are leaning on you, like, show us the way, And just knowing that it can kind of help you in detailing and making those decisions. But it is it's a relationship thing. So knowing them and them knowing you and giving their trust into you to kind of, head up that project is really key. So you got to do your work on the back end to hold up your side of the bargain.
And how important really is obviously there's many different ways that you can go about it, but we use pitch and shot deck specifically for pitching this stuff to clients. How important is that to create that visual representation so that they can see it?
Yeah. So for us, for me and the way my brain works as, director, DP type mindset, I've got to see it visually so that I can have a feel and a vibe and a mood. So like Shot Deck, which you just mentioned, is one of the tools that we use to pull references. If I'm doing a high key commercial that's like in a kitchen, I want to be able to see some references so I can have an idea of, okay, maybe I can light this way, or this it can be, kind of the vibe, or even if it's just like, here's this establishing shot that really sets the scene. I can take that and put it into our references folder. So it just gives us an idea on how we're going to get into a scene or get into a location. And also sometimes these things work really well with showing the client, you know what I mean? Because they want to be able to see, oh, okay, it's going to look kind of like that, or it's going to look, a little bit like a Netflix episode, or it's going to look more like a television. Like that's where it's up to us to kind of show them the direction of, the visual. And Shot Deck is one of the greatest ways. I've been using it for almost every project recently to just get a mood, get a vibe, start somewhere. You can also, they have so much stuff. You can almost tell the story through Shot Deck, different references, as almost like a storyboard. There's a lot of times when everything's not on there, but it's a great place to get you inspired. Number one, as a really intricate filmmaker type way. I love it.
So for some background on what Shot Deck is, Shot Deck is beautiful because it basically takes movies and puts all of the frames of the movies into a place that you can search for type of shot, camera used, lens used, film used, location, type of, excuse me, angle, anything. And you could search
even
by
skin tone.
Right, you can search by each or multiple of those categories. So it's beautiful because we want to make sure that when we're on set, that we've basically done everything and all we have to do is hit record, because we want to make sure that everybody's on the same page enough to know. And a lot of times, we've worked with people that know a lot about film, video, etc. We've worked with people that know nothing about film, video, etc. So it's important for us to make sure that the mood, the vibe, the feel is portrayed through what we're picking on Shot Deck, because we want to make sure that, obviously we're filmmakers, so we like that dark, grungy interview style, but maybe it doesn't fit this project. So we want to make sure that we're representing what we're seeing so that we can have that communication to make sure that what we're actually going to be doing on production day is what's important for the job.
Absolutely. There's we've talked about a couple different apps so far, and different things, and they all cost money, but this next one is, to me, the most important one that we have as business people, because we're filmmakers at heart, but we have to have a business mindset for this to work. And it's Notion.com. I mentioned it on one of the last podcasts. Most important thing, in my opinion, that we have is basically a project manager slash.
Let's be honest, it's whatever you want it to be.
Yeah, it's whatever you can customize it
Notion.
You can customize it to be whatever. And what are some of the ways that we use it to help us with our pre-production?
I think it's important for us to use Notion in our pre-production, and I'm just going to be very transparent. There are a ton of apps that do this. We just landed on Notion because we use it for many things. We found it to work the best for us after trying a lot of different things. But whether it's a shot list, whether it's a call sheet, we've also, again, created templates in Notion that when we start a project, we hit new project, and it's just filling everything out. All we have to do is fill in the blanks. It's basically like we've created ourselves a Mad Libs of the project. So it's super easy for us to go through and do this. But I think it's valuable because, again, we want to stress this enough. When we're in pre-production, it's so important for us to nail it, because on production day, we're renting spaces, we're renting equipment, we're hiring people. Time is important. Respecting people's time is important. Making sure the talent is prepared is important. So we use Notion to document all of this, put it all in one place, and we are going to be printing out call sheets or emailing call sheets to talent to make sure that they know, here's your arrival time, here's where you can park, here's what lunch is going to be, here's your lines, here's your outfit. All of those things are important. But also from the shot list side, we can go, and we'll talk about making a little video village when we get to production day, but we want to make sure that we have printouts so that everybody's on the same page. At this time, we're going to be doing this shot. It needs this equipment. From our side, we know, okay, we're done with this shot. We're going to switch from the 85 to the 35 mil lens. We're going to be working with this light. Let's move this around, do that. It's just so important to make sure that we've documented basically how it runs. There's so many examples, but we want to make sure that it happens in our sleep. We want to go to bed the night before that shoot feeling like we're so prepared, and Notion is how we choose to do that.
Yeah, and I think this kind of stems back, for me at least as an athlete, like doing all the mental prep, learning the game, scouting report. This is the scouting report if you're into sports. Doing your scouting report, so when you wake up the day of the game, the day of production, you're just ready to play. You're ready to show up.
You just got to go execute.
Yep. You got to go execute your vision. And that is what pre-production is all about, is getting that vision, getting everything ready, your scouting report, and being ready to show up the next day and bring it and execute and make a great project.
Did I miss anything about how we use Notion? I kind of was vague, but I think
honestly,
so much.
Like you said, Notion could be whatever your heart desires. We have to-do lists on there. We have, concepts for future ideas and things we want to do to grow the business. I mean, we even keep spreadsheets of, tax stuff, write-offs or expenses. There's a lot of different ways that you can use Notion. it's kind of a one-stop shop for us. I can go on my phone, and while I'm, watching my kids and they're playing with toys, I can like, oh, I got an idea, let me throw it on there. Or I can be, anywhere. It's just a really great tool that without it, my brain would be lost and I wouldn't get anything done.
And I want to also shout out some other, maybe I only have one that comes to mind, but you might have more. We've also used Milanote in the past for some pre-production stuff, and some projects that are bigger, maybe we use that for, some we don't. It kind of depends, but finding the right tool for the job is important. And we're just here today to give examples of what we use, how we use it. Maybe it works for you. Maybe you find something better that works for you. We're always open and flexible. So if there's something that we're missing, please let us know. We're more than happy to pivot if it works for us. But it's important to make sure. And we use what Milanote does, Notion can do in its own ways. But tell us a little bit about maybe what Milanote does.
Well, yeah, Milanote's a lot more filmmaker specific.
Yeah.
Whereas Notion is just for business, kind of, in a sense.
It's a blank. It's a
blank slate.
People use it for
whatever.
Anyway.
Yeah. Milanote is geared towards us directly building, shot lists. It has all the templates. It's all like, filmmaker jargon with a lot of the templates, or marketing, marketing world. So it's a little more specific in that. I really do like it, but it's one of those things like Notion can do so much more. And so it's a little bit easier to kind of just work in there and stay in there instead of bouncing around because we already talked to you about, we've got pitch and shot deck. So we're kind of pulling those references, building it, and I can bring our pitch
we
document,
put it into Notion,
drop it into Notion. It's all there. I don't have to go to like a third place.
And admittedly, Milanote is incredible, but some of the templates that they have, we're not always working on productions that are that big. Yeah. So we've kind of taken some of their templates and recreated it for our own uses within a Notion template. So that I agree. I think there's a concept of having a second brain. I'm not going to get too far into that, but we kind of use Notion as our second brain.
Yeah.
So if there's something that needs to happen, it goes there.
Yeah, if we're doing a large scale 20, 30 crew and, a bunch of actors, I think Milanote may be the play because it is.
Yeah.
You can get a lot more detailed and dive in and keep everything in one place like for a production. But there's a million different things you can do. But I think that really pre-production is so key, and you got to make sure you get it locked in and get prepared, because what really matters at the end of the day is production.
Yeah. Before we get in production, is there anything that I missed about working with the client?
Yeah. Just being flexible and having good communication. Nothing's worse than on either side of it, you reaching out, them reach out to you, and you're not getting back to them, or and dragging your feet. I come from the logistics background where I was working trucking logistics, and it was expected to get emails back within a minute. Like, seriously, like someone emailed you, I need to have an answer and a response within a minute or two. So I'm not saying be that crazy, because there are, you have other things going on, and when you're creative, you don't want to divide your attention, but make sure you can get back to them within a couple hours or that day on anything, especially, a few days leading up to the project's, production day, because they're going to love that for you, and that's one of those things that's intangible, and I think a lot of people don't do well. And I think why we stand out is just our communication is next level, and it has to be, because that's the only way that you can get everybody happy and on the same page, and allow them to trust you, you know what I mean? So that you can go do what you need to do, and it's communication.
So let's dive into production. I have a story that I thought of that I wrote down while we were talking earlier that I think is one of my favorite stories, because I heard it and then I saw it be implemented immediately. We were on a set for a commercial shoot, and it was our first time really hiring out and renting spaces and equipment, and it was one of our first bigger productions. Definitely not the biggest, but one of our bigger ones. And the person that we had helping us, super, super knowledgeable, came up to us and said, all right, you two have to figure out who's going to be the voice, and you have to bring everybody together in the room and make sure that they know that you're the voice. And you had the button up on that day, so you kind of took that role. You looked much better. So you took that role and you brought everybody in the room and basically went through and like, look, if there's anything that you need, I'm your guy. If there's anything that needs to happen, ask me. I'll figure it out. And immediately everybody just kind of snapped right in, and it was a great production because of that. And I think do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, I remember that.
Yeah. And I think it's just such a cool story because I think it's important on your production day. You're not showing up and kind of just turning off the world so that you can get what you need done. Yeah. Part of production, obviously, there are people that are solo producers, and we're only two, so we can only handle so much, but that's important.
Yeah, there's got to be it's got to be somebody that's filtering all of the questions, all of the problems, the things that got to figure out, and I think that's where the director comes in, and I think that's where someone's got to take lead and take charge on set, because there's a lot more going on than just hit record and that's a good shot, yay. Like there's a lot, like, where do we park? We got a kid that his parents are here, they're early, where can they hang out? Can the parents be on set? Like questions like that. So you'll get all kinds of things. You never know what you're gonna get on a day of a shoot, but yeah, somebody's got to kind of be that, because then that allows everyone else to do their job and be focused on what they're doing at the same time. And bigger projects, there may be an AD, an assistant director, that's kind of filtering some of the smaller questions that don't have to deal with production, but maybe the color of the hat that they're wearing might go directly to the director, and he's got to make that decision, he or she, at the spur of a moment. And one of the big things that I have learned and started to understand is always have an answer, whether it's right or wrong as a director. Like, because if you look lost and can't make a decision, it's gonna create dissension and terror within the crew and cast, and you don't want that. So always have an answer. Try to think about these things ahead of time. Anticipate some of these things that may be asked. There'll always be things that are out of the blue, but yeah, that's really important, because production day has to move like a well-oiled machine, and everybody's got to be. You bring people in that are the best at what they do, right? And you've got to allow them to be the best at what they do. You know what I mean?
I think that's a very good point, because, for that moment specifically that I'm referencing, we've always been so good at being two and splitting up duties and splitting up responsibilities, but that was a much bigger, I don't want to say stakes, because it's not like there's stakes riding on it, but there was it was more important that there was a solid voice for something that was of that scale. Mm-hmm. And that was the first time where, to me, I was like, oh my gosh, like, yeah, like, even with the Misfits, we were doing smaller things here and there, and even on those, it was still, a smaller crew, so everything was split. I'm doing audio, but I'm also making sure that the lighting's fixed and this and that. And even like on that shoot, our roles were kind of jumbled up a little bit more from what we're normally used to. So it was like the perfect storm to kind of make that happen. I think ever since that moment, we've been so much better at just, this is the voice, this is what's happening. And you're right. And if you don't have the right answer for that question, you can't just say, I don't know. Yeah. Because then they're going to be like, well, I'm just wasting my time coming to the person that should be in charge of everything to ask these questions. Mm-hmm. You need to at least know who can you redirect that question to make sure that they maybe have the answer.
Yes. And that may be a part of it too. Even, you may not know exactly. You might say, hey, go talk to the wardrobe designer. They have all of your stuff there and they'll be able to help you out. And that might be all you need to do. But don't say, oh, I don't know. Like, help them out and get them in the right direction moving, because there are certain people that there that have, all the answers for whatever that specific thing is.
So what are important steps to making sure that the talent is prepared and ready to go?
Yeah, the talent. That's one of those things where, for me, I think a lot of it is upfront discussions when you get a chance. Sometimes people, they may not want to spend the extra time, but storyboards is really key. I like to send those early on, let them take a look at that, figure out what they're kind of doing, and then we can, have a call if we need, get them prepped. They can start asking questions. With these commercial things, if there's not lines and stuff like that, we're not really gonna do a script readout or whatever. But anything that they can get out of the way before production day, question wise, is great. And then on production day, just kind of, it's really important to go through those walkthroughs and start to show them, all right, so this is, these are your marks. You're going to start here. You're going to move to here. This is where you're going to do your action, and just really walk through all of that before everything gets going, before all the cameras turn on so they can get comfortable. And it's like anything, relationships and just building comfort. Because, a couple times in our commercials, we've been dealing with kids that have never acted before. And they show up and see lights and cameras and they're just like, blank face. So it's really important for us to just like, what's your favorite video game? Just talk to them, just open up so that they're like not like the strangers telling me what to do. It's more like, okay, like we kind of
Build rapport.
ease into it, build rapport. So then when I ask them to, do an action on set or show them something that they're, they trust it's going to work for what we're doing. And it's just communication once again. It's really part of it.
Yeah, it's so cool. Normally I would say most of our projects are projects that have voices or lines or what have you. We have a shoot coming up later on this week where it's going to be none of that. So it's going to be so interesting. We're also shooting not just in one space, one room. We're shooting across, larger spaces, multiple locations. So, blocking is going to be very important in making sure that they know, okay, I need you to be, walking at this pace or doing this at this pace by the time we hit action, because we need to make sure that that movement seems fluid and natural, not like we're just starting from a standstill and then building up into it, because then you're rampant. It's just going to look weird. So,
Yeah.
That's also an important part.
Yeah, I mean, just getting everybody kind of on the same page, because what happens is your camera team has to be in sync with your talent, has to be in sync with your audio, has to be in sync with, the people moving the lights and being prepared to, whether it's going to be a scene change or we're just going to change angles and flip angles. We've got to refresh and move the lights sometimes. All of that. Everybody's got to kind of be on the same page. So the walkthroughs are really important. The rehearsal is really important right before we actually decide to hit record and go through everything, just so that there's like we're on the same page. That's all.
Maybe the best way to talk about production, and I think you're a good person to go through this, how I'm going to pose it. Take us through a production day.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'll try to. So typically, let's say we have our call times for crew, maybe for our team might be, let's say 8 a.m. We probably won't be shooting anything until 10, 11, depending on the size and scale of the set. So we're getting there. The first 30 minutes is unloading, getting things in, moving as quickly as we can.
I did say we're two. We don't got
we
don't got 10 PAs helping.
We don't have
yet.
10 PAs. Hopefully, we some days we have a couple extra hands and it's nice. Usually we're there about an hour before our client gets there. Our client then will come in a little bit later and start to set up whatever products that they need for the shoot, wardrobe stuff or whatever they're bringing in. One specifically, like we have a glasses company that we work with, so they're bringing in, getting their stuff set up for that. As we're setting up the first scene, we're kind of just getting things prepared at that moment to, for the first scene. We may think ahead a little bit and say, well, we might be using another room there. We're going to put that piece of gear in there because we know we're not using it in the first scene. So we kind of think through those things, and that's all stuff we do kind of ahead of time before we get to set. And, we're getting things set up, and we finally got it ready to rock and roll. Now it's all right, talent. Let's come in. Let's do our walkthroughs. Let's get things kind of explained. So we're going to do this. We're going to shoot this direction, then we're going to switch. Explain those things so everybody can kind of know, like, okay, that's the flow of what we're doing, and then get shooting. And the big thing for us and with our shot listing is just getting great coverage. Coverage is key. So what I mean by coverage is getting for instance, in this podcast, we have our wide shot, we have our close up on Justin, and we have our close up on Eric. Maybe in a commercial, we may also have an ultra close up. We may have a medium shot, because every shot invokes a different mood sometimes. So, getting those coverage shots so we have leverage in editing for different things, and then switch it. And we're going to do our other talent, whether if it's a conversation or what's going on. And, that's kind of the breakdown of each scene. And then as the commercial may move, the scenes change, we, move to the next set. Maybe we're packing up and going to another location. Maybe it's a 2-day shoot and you're kind of doing that a couple times. But production can be hectic. It is hectic. It's a lot of fun, and I love production day. It reminds me of game day. Like, I love it so much, but it wears you out. And that's part of it. And that's honestly, for me, what I do all of this for is to be on set for production. Like it's my favorite thing, and that's really where my love for filmmaking comes from. The other stuff is like a means to an end. The editing, there's some things in editing I like, but most of it you just do it because it has to be done. But like production day, ain't nothing like it, man.
Talk to me about the importance of, I don't know if we coined this ourselves or if we took it from somewhere else, but Video Village.
Oh yeah, no, we definitely pulled that from somewhere else. But Video Village is essentially where monitors are set up for the client to hang out. The director can also go there and watch some of the takes, but it's essentially the transmitted image from the camera or cameras to a screen that's outside of the set, so that people that need to see things can watch and not be, in the way of the cameras, hovering over the back of the cameras, because they have a job to do, right? This is also great for like wardrobe people or set designers. Like they can look and be like, there's a water bottle on set. Let me go. Like they hang out in
Ain't no
Video
Game
Village.
of Thrones Starbucks cup happening.
Yeah, we can't let that happen.
Yeah.
So Video Village is super key, and that's something that we started doing, I'd say about a year and a half ago. We got our Axoon transmitter, our wireless transmitter. It's been great. We went to a school and shot, and we were able to get a flat screen TV, like when you have a substitute teacher.
Yeah,
so they bought a TV, and
TV
we were able
on
to
wheels.
set that up in the back so the client and all the people they brought could just hang out back there, and they weren't like, up on the front, because we had a lot of moving parts that day. Yeah, it's just a great thing. It also allows you to kind of really take a step back and say, this might be how this is going to be viewed, when it's actually on TV.
Yeah.
Versus like, your little monitor, your 6-inch monitor or whatever. So Video Village takes a little bit of extra steps to set up. And one of those things, when you do have some extra hands, it's definitely worth it. And if you have a client that, is really involved, it's good for them to have that as well.
Yeah, and I think it's super valuable because even, if you're the one shooting on the camera, like, like you said, you're only looking on this screen. It's nice for you to kind of see like, okay, maybe I need to try. I mean, this is going to sound so minute, but I do think about this when I'm shooting, let me try like a 6-degree different pitch. And, if I pan it this way instead, or, it's also important because our glass is commercial. There are so many things that go into a glasses commercial that people don't know about. The lenses aren't in the glasses, for example. We obviously are bringing a whole light set to the set to get the best lighting, get the best mood. So if there's a shadow coming through from the frames, we need to make sure that we're not, so having a Video Village or anything similar to have a reference point so that if there's, we're obviously looking at from the lens, the framing, the angle, the shot. We're not looking for flyaways on talent as much as maybe we should be sometimes. We're focusing on a certain thing to make sure that our shot is right, but it's so nice to have that director or the client to make sure, all right, but.
Yeah. Yeah, and then that's, you have to have sometimes really, really soft light so you don't cast the shadows on their face from the rims of the glasses, or like you said, flyaways, the makeup person can be sitting and watching and say, hey, hold up real quick, go fix the hair, spritz it up or whatever. That's what that's for, and is super important.
So now production day is done. We've done our work. We're going to bed. We're feeling really good, Justin.
Yeah.
Really good. Let's talk about post-production.
Yeah, post.
Now, we've used one client for a lot of the examples, but, the mood comes through in the edit. So now I think there's another project that we've done that, Justin and I kind of were talking before about what projects we want to talk about specifically. You brought a lot of mood into this other edit through your grading, through your cut. So what about post-production?
Yeah, post-production. So I'll be blatantly honest. I hate editing most of the time. I love color grading almost as much as I love production day. It's like where I get to bring my paintbrush out and make something.
Little savant.
Yes. So there's a lot of different things. Once you get home after the shoot, the biggest thing is whether you're on set. We do this on set. We'll back up footage and then get that to the hard drive it needs to be, and then we get it home, back it up again on our servers or whatnot. So that's like the main thing that happens the day of the shoot. And then once we're finally into post-production, a lot of it for us is starting to get everything out, figure out what our best takes were, start structuring our edit, those type things, which we can probably do a whole episode on, just like, the structure to an edit. There's a lot of different things that we've learned over the years that help that, be a lot more efficient, especially like documentaries. It can get really, where you're shooting 10, 12 hours of footage and stuff. So, yeah, I think the big thing is getting it there, getting going. I typically like to start with whatever our storyboard kind of said. So I'm cutting story out the gate, trying to find the best takes for that, because we already have kind of an idea of what we wanted to do. So I start there, look at that, and then start to tweak off of that to see how I can make the edit better. But typically I'm, getting that initial, this is what was in our head down first, and going with that.
Yes, we have experience doing many different time slots, but 30 seconds is not a lot of time for those 30-second spots. And, we are like, all right, I know that I got this in a quick amount of time, but then you're putting it together and you're like, shoot, now I'm 2 seconds over. I got to cut 2 seconds out somehow. So it's
nothing
like,
worse.
can I get like 3 frames out of every shot? And maybe that's 2 seconds.
You have such a good edit and it's like 31 and a half seconds.
Yeah. And there is you can put that on YouTube. You can put that on Reels. That's fine. But you cannot feel a pain TV time. You cannot stretch that for TV. But I always love to say, if we did our job in pre-production and if we did our job on production day, the edit is the easiest part. That's not always true, but I like to say that because it's true. It is true. We do our best to make sure that when we get to that editing suite, we are ready to go. We know, basically, having been on production, we know kind of exactly, maybe there's something that wasn't initially in our storyboard, but we were in the moment. We're like, oh, that might be a good substitute. A future episode, we're going to be talking a lot about, the storytelling aspect itself, but getting coverage is so important. Maybe, we ended up liking the close-up of this more so than we thought, and maybe that's a better fit. So those are all important things.
Yeah, and there was like a situation where we as the filmmakers loved these shots, right? Oh man, this shot looks so good. It sets the scene, it tells the story. The client wanted to see the product better. So they were like, we're not seeing the product enough. Well, luckily, we did our job and we had plenty of coverage and we had those close-ups that we could switch to.
Yeah, get your coverage, people.
And show those close-ups a little bit better, show their product better. It may not have been what we necessarily wanted to do from a storytelling aspect, but to help serve the client, we had that in the bag. And that's super key. Like, and if we would have just been shooting it the way we wanted to and not taking that into account, we would have had serious issues on the back end. But that's all something that you got to keep in mind too, right?
So go through, we like to do 3 versions.
Yeah.
Ideally. Obviously, we know, we're never going to have a version wasted if we spell somebody's name wrong or something silly like that. But generally speaking, we like 3 versions. Take us through those 3.
Yeah, so I'll just start at the beginning. So when we actually do our contracts and build that, we build in 3 versions in the edit for a couple reasons, but to protect us so that we're not doing a bunch of extra work, little minute work. So we usually have like a fee if you go over the 3rd version. We don't necessarily always, enact that, but we do want to protect ourselves there. And then it just allows us to kind of get some of those early details out of the way in like version 2, right? So version 1 for us, we want to make sure we're cutting story. We have the story down, so when we send that to the client, they have they're already looking at something that makes sense in their head, and is a pretty close to a polished product. I always think it's really important to get color grading done then, or at least the early pass done then, so that they're not looking at log footage, because they don't know how to be explained to what log is and why it looks gray and like what's going on. There's no color there. What's happening? So get that done out the gate. At least get it to Rec 709 or something. Yep. So we're sending story, and typically I like to have music and our vibe that we want to go with in that, or any early sound effect ideas in there. May have to mix stuff a little bit later, but especially if we're like trying something new. But have that there, send that to them. And usually our feedback from there could be, oh, I don't like that song, or we want to get that out of the way after version 1 because, when you start cutting to music, if you're changing that after you've fixed everything else, it's literally the worst.
You might have to start over.
So yeah, I like to try to get that out of the way, out of the gate, version 1. Get that over to them. Version 2 is typically getting the details done. There may be, some very small transitions or cuts you want to make better, add some motion blur on like a camera pan or just little things that you want to do. Start adding those and implementing those when you kind of got we like the story, because typically the client's like, take this shot out. I don't understand what this shot is.
Right.
Like, we don't get it. It might be we get it, but they don't get it. Get those things kind of dusted up and out of the way, make it work a little bit better for them, and then start to, fix those little closer details. So that's version 2. And then we send that to them. So then after that, hopefully all we have is like, change this and we're done. Or we're looking good. We're kind of finishing up. We're wrapping up. The earlier you can kind of get that there and get them a product that's really close to being done, then the quicker we can get to a final version. And version 3 is typically, we'll get feedback after version 2, and it may be like, we need to see our sponsor at the end, or our what we call the donut, where it's like the little thing that kind of tells you, blah, 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 if you do this, by this date.
The but part of the promotion.
Maybe we need to see that for like a little bit longer. It's going too quick. So then we'll, that's where we kind of, fix up those last details. But typically by then, version 3, we send it, good to go. There's sometimes when, depending on where the client is showing the commercial, whether it's on Hulu, for instance, or it's on, Bally Sports, or it's running on the local channel, there may be different, some of them can't formatting. So yeah, may not be able to be 4K, or we have to, do 1080 on this, or it's got to be less than 100 megabytes, size wise for this channel. So we do make all the different versions at the end once we have a locked commercial, and then you send it and you wait for it to play on TV.
Yeah,
that's a really good feeling.
It is. The one thing that I love to say about post-production is that if we did our job throughout all that we've talked about so far in this podcast, we're just putting a puzzle together.
Yep.
We have the story laid out. It's been approved. We went and we shot all those stuff. Plenty of coverage to make sure we got back up if we need to, something. And then all you got to do in that timeline is just in, out, down we go. In, out, down we go. Now that's an ideal world, obviously. I'm going to let you just have the floor because I know that you nerd out about this. Let's go through color grading.
Oh, I forgot we were getting to that. Color grading. So for people that don't know, when you look at an image and it looks very saturated, or you look at an image and you got that teal and blue look, or you're looking at an image and it's, highly stylized, there's somebody that's their job to do. Typically, and like we talk about this, the color grade and the idea usually comes from pre-production. Like we talked about, when we're pulling references, we may decide on a color palette that we're going to use for a film or a commercial way in the beginning. At that point, we may even be starting to build LUTs for some footage so that we can even have a LUT on set for the day of production that's very close, and they call that a show LUT. Have that in the camera so that you can essentially see what it's going to look
village,
like. Yeah, when you're on set. Typically, that then will go to post-production, and it may tweak a little bit more just to make it a little more saucy. But for me, color grading, I started color grading in Final Cut initially. Not a lot of tools in there, so I was a big LUT user. I bring the LUTs in and throw them, slap them on there. And I did that when I got into Premiere as well, slapping LUTs, and it never looked right for me. I thought it was cool, when you start, you're like, oh, this looks really good. It doesn't. The LUTs, when you just throw them on there, are made to get you to a starting place. Until you hone that skill to kind of really, make it work for each shot and each scene, you're kind of you're really not doing it justice.
Right.
So then one day, I found out about this app called DaVinci Resolve. DaVinci. DaVinci Resolve, and it was, everything I was hearing is where all the color graders were actually doing a lot of the posts. So people would send, XML their project from Premiere Pro over to DaVinci Resolve to get colored, and then boom. Then I started diving down that world and learning about, how do I actually build my own LUT from the ground up. Then everything changed. And that was one of my favorite things and one of my favorite learning curves that I ever went through. And one of the things I really love is just like, diving into taking an image from, where you think it looks amazing and it looks even better. And you didn't realize that you had so much leverage in there. And color grading could be its own episode. There's a lot of different nuances to it, dealing with, matching cameras and correcting footage before you even start. There's a whole process.
I don't want to interrupt, but I do think it's important, since we are trying to be so broad with our audiences.
Yeah.
Talk to me about the just quickly the difference between color correction and color grading.
Okay, yeah, that's a good one. So color correction is me taking my image out of log format and getting it to Rec 709 and also having it properly balanced and exposed. So that typically would be, I have the color correction. I have my Rec 709 LUT or whatnot conversion, get it to Rec 709. Now the image may be slightly tinted blue because maybe on set it wasn't done right. So I'm correcting that so that my white balance is perfect. And it might have been underexposed by a half a stop. So I'm going to bump my exposure. Now I have an image that's exposed properly and the proper white balance. So that's color correction. That has to be done first before any color grading happens so that all the shots can be consistent.
Yeah, if you do it the other way, you're putting a Band-Aid on a bigger cut than.
But yeah, if you do your color grade and you're just throwing it on all these different clips, if there was any mistakes made on set, it's not accounted for.
Yeah.
So then once you have, for a scene, for instance, I have all 12 shots color corrected. Now I can start on my color grading path and I may start with my wide shot and color grade that and get that to the look that I want. And then I can start to work and add that to my other shots. Then there's some consistency and cohesion there within the grade. And that's where you get stylistic. That's where you start adding, you might add grain at the very end, or you might add some light leaks, or you may, get in there and work and, do some power windows and start to kind of like focus in, the exposure on your subject and kind of blur, make the background a little darker. There's so many nuanced things. You can track those in there, and it's so much fun.
Yeah, I mean, before we sign off, I think just a little bit of context. Justin came as a Final Cut user. I've always been a Premiere user, and now we're on DaVinci. So I would say it's safe to say those are the three big wigs in video. I mean, there's Vegas, there's other editing softwares, but I would say those are probably the three main that you would. If you're on Family Feud, those are the top three answers. You survey 100 people, those are the top three answers.
That's a good way to put it.
But it's cool because we have experience in all of those, and we know why we're doing, because it helps us tell our story the best way. Mm-hmm. And I think that's important. So
absolutely. I want to leave you with something.
Yeah. Any final thoughts?
What was it like to see your commercial on TV for the first time?
That's a good point. So I have a flip experience. I think you're better to answer that because I worked for a sports team, and my first big experience was seeing it on the Jumbotron. So I had family come to that game and everything. That was so cool because when we're making this podcast, we're going to put it on the internet. We really don't have any tangible knowledge of who is watching it.
Yeah.
It's always cool to say you have 1 million subscribers, picture 1 million people in a room. There is that hypothetical that you can play with yourself, but when and maybe your TV answer is maybe a little bit different, but when you're at that sporting event, you're seeing your thing on the Jumbotron, you're looking around, and it was cool because, I'm looking at people looking at it, smiling, laughing, engaging. Mm-hmm. There's no better feeling.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think for me, there's a mystique about TV. I came from a small town in North Carolina I grew up in, and seeing the newscaster, at a stoplight was like, Mom, you know who I saw today?
Yeah.
On the way home from school? You know what I mean? That's a big deal. So TV is always, for me, a big thing. So the first time I saw our commercial on TV, I actually missed it. it was
Well,
recorded.
you don't have cable, so
Yeah, it was on opening day for the Brewers. I got to see our commercial. So it didn't play on when we were streaming it on our app. So it had to get recorded on my mother-in-law's TV, and then we watched it like an hour later and like found it, in the footage. But it was just like, it was surreal because all the work that we put in, all the things that we do just to, do a project, number one. And, when you started, I bought a camera to shoot baseball videos, right? Of me coaching. Now I have a commercial playing on opening day for the Milwaukee Brewers. It was just a big moment for myself personally and for my family. So it felt really good, man.
And with that, I think we've done a pretty good job taking you from pre-production to post-production. So thank you so much for being part of we're in the production, but you're part of the post. I don't know. I'm trying to come up with some weird example that ain't going to fit. But thank you so much for listening and or watching. We really appreciate all of your viewership, and feel free to, like I said, leave any thoughts, comments. If you know of something better, what works for you. Like I said, we're only giving what we have experience with. We talked about a lot of companies that we use. If we have affiliation with any of them now, there's going to be links that support us down below. If we get them in the future, we will add them. Right now, we really don't have anything. We just use these products and softwares because they're just what we love using and what we found are the best for us. So with that, I'm going to sign off. Thank you so much for watching. Leave us a like, give us a comment. 5-star reviews are always helpful. Share it with a friend. Let us know how this episode has helped you, and we'll see you guys next time.